Welcome everyone to the last but not least day of the fifth day of the second International Energy Poverty Action Week. My name is Marine Cornelis and I will be your host today. We will get into a very promising session to wrap up this week. We will be looking at energy poverty and the future, how young leaders manage to see and project addressing energy poverty in the context of climate change. It's a huge issue. It's a huge challenge. They, in my view, are considered as young future leaders, but they are actually the leader that we need now because they may have a much better understanding of the situation than the previous generations, because they have been experiencing climate change really since they were born. So I'm really looking forward to this session, and I'm thrilled to have a panel with so much geographical variety. So one thing we would like to ask you is, if you go on social media, use the hashtag #ActOnEnergyPoverty. We will be able to find you this way and retweet you and see also what you have to tell us. And if you want to engage with us later, please do so keep on using this hashtag. I've also put a QR code that you are kindly asked to use. Please use your phone and scan it. Otherwise, my colleagues are going to put it in the chat at the moment, where you will be able to share the, let's say, most compelling, most engaging, most interesting idea that you would like to really keep from today's session, but it can also be related to IEPAW. It will generate a word cloud that we will be able to project at the end of this session. If you have questions, please, the way it will be organized, the session today. So first, we're going to get presentations from Fons, Paula, Dimitri, and Rachita. Then they will present themselves, their organization, their compelling ideas in a couple of minutes. And then there will be a panel discussion, between them all. So if you have any particular question or things you would like to ask them, please wait for the, let's say, second part of the discussion. Then Sejal Pukarel, who joins us from Nepal, UNESCO Nepal, will wrap up the conversation. And then Manon Barbridge, our wonderful Manon, who did all the heavy lifting this week, will be wrapping up the event. So it's a huge pleasure and honor for me to have you all today. I can see that we are already more than 30. If you had missed something, just please tune in, and we have been so mindful that we've recorded all the sessions, so you will be able to listen to them again in case you missed something. And yes, please keep on using the hashtag, and please keep on connecting with all of us at IEPAW and with our speakers too. So first, I would like to give the floor to Dimitri Tientega, who is the Executive Director of the Young Energy Actors and the Young Minister of Energy for Burkina Faso. I asked all my speakers to come with a quote, with something that this session inspired them. And I found Dimitri Tientega's quote to be extremely relevant. And Dimitri said, "I am young and therefore an actor, and never again only a young bystander." So Dimitri, please, the floor is yours. You're going to be able to start your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Marine. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be with you on this panel and at this moment. I'm Dimitri Tientega from Burkina Faso. I'm a solar energy engineer. I'm also, since last year, the young energy minister of Burkina Faso. Then I'm working with our policy makers. Okay, I'm working with our policy makers about youth need, youth expectation about energy domain. And also, since 4 years now, I have created an organization called the Young Energy Actors Association. With this association, we are working to empower youth and women about policy making, how we can get youth more involved in elaborating and policy and development of policies and about energy access. Then I'm also the co-founder of Peak Energy. This is a company which work to develop technologies for people at rural areas in order to contribute to energy transition. Yes, please, Marine. Yes, so I have dispatched my work at 3 levels. I was talking about Young Energy Actors Association. Through this association, we are developing a lot of projects about energy debates, which is our most important project. This project is a kind of framework which helps youth voice to be more heard by authorities. We organize that every year, and we are planning to the 5th edition to be start very soon. Then we also have a project called professional training. With this project, we try to produce solar lamps for internal displaced children, which are attending to the school. And also, we are making public education and awareness action about climate, about environment, and all things concerning sustainable development. Marine? Through my work as a young energy minister, what I'm doing is to go to remote areas to be with young people at this level to understand what can be their needs and what they want. And then we produce regular reports in order to inform our decision makers and about and also give them some kind of solution that we think it may help people to young people to be more to satisfy their needs. On these pictures, you can see that you can see the former minister of energy, Bashir Ismail Ouedraogo, after a consultation with youth. The other one is the Minister of Youth of Egypt that I meet during COP27, and the last picture is a meeting I had with the present Ministry of Environment about energy, to share with him a report that I produced about youth needs in our context. So thank you very much. Yes, this is also my work with Peak Energy. I was talking about system we are developing for farmers, for rural areas, communities, in order to contribute to energy transition. Yes, now the next step of my work and what I'm doing is about I was talking about energy debates. We are planning to do that on the topic contribution of renewable energy and digital to youth and women empowerment in rural areas in the context of climate change. We are planning also a very interesting event called International Roundtable on Energy Actors. With Marina, yes, Anne Carol, I think she is on this meet. This will be take part at I think that 18 March on March. In order to, yes, all of you are invited. Yes, and we will be really excited to discuss about women, about solar, and also about digitalization, energy prospect in Burkina Faso and Africa. So you can connect with me if you have some project in Burkina Faso, in West Africa, yes, everywhere. We are present mostly in 4 countries of West Africa. So you can ask on social media, or this is my WhatsApp number.
Thank you, Dimitri, for sharing your WhatsApp number. Thank you very, very much for this great presentation. And I can assure everyone that Dimitri is a delight to work with. So if you set up any project in West Africa, don't hesitate to contact him. Our next speaker, I hope she's still on the call. So she was on and off, is Ana Paula Ramis Aguilar. She's the founder of the Latin American projects Mujeres 2030, Jovenes 2030, and Difusion 2030, and she's from Mexico. And Ana Paula is very, very, very inspiring too, and she's been shouting really as a young woman, as a young person for climate justice, and she says she will keep on shouting until for climate justice until they give them a space as decision makers, because we are the present and not just the future. Anna, I can't agree more with what you just says. So please, Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maureen. Well, hello, everyone. I'm hoping you're having a great day. And well, as Maureen said, I'm Ana Paula Ramis Aguilar. I'm a social and climate activist. I'm from Mexico. I'm studying law at UNACH, since I think that decision-making is basic for ensuring climate justice. My biggest dream is to be a UN ambassador. I'm passionate about gender equality, climate action, and quality education. So as you see, I'm keen on SDG 4, 5, and 13 mainly. Of course, I'm also into all the SDGs since they are connected. I have always thought that education is a way to make this world a better one, since knowledge can lead to incredible and creative ideas to solve each global issue. Youth and children's voices must be heard in the political decisions, because they need to show older generations their own perspective for them to strengthen their weakness, so when they take action, they do it sustainably. To live in a world where discrimination, stereotypes, mansplaining, and violence doesn't exist, women must be also taken into account and not left behind. That's why my project's name Difusion 2030, Jóvenes 2030, Mujeres 2030, Niñas, Derechos y Futuro, are focused on empowering Latin American youth, children, and women in 2030 agenda, global citizenship, SDG projects, historical memory, human rights, life projects, and leadership. After attending virtual workshops about these topics, the participants write an article for the project's magazine. This helps them be better change makers that can lead their communities to a sustainable future, and to have a critical mindset that lets them express their point of view of one of the main topics that they learned about. In this way, they also will inspire other people that want to make this world a better one. Alliances are important to have a bigger impact and touch the hearts of youth and children. That's why each of my projects have as allies international NGOs. So, thank you, Maureen. That was my presentation.
Thank you so much, Anna. And yes, this platform is really about discussing how young generations can really have their seats at the table. It's not only useful for current policy making, but also for the forward thinking leaders as well. So thank you so much, Anna. And let's switch to our next speaker, who's Fons Janssen. He's a country coordinator for the European Climate Pact of the Netherlands, and he's been working in really community development and action at the Benelux level. And he's been quoting, his quote is really, really relevant as well. He says, most Western European countries are starting to realize we need to look differently at third country migration to solve energy security and climate mitigation challenges in and outside Europe. We're learning to reappreciate skilled vocational workers and craftsmanship. Fons, it's really interesting that you decided to focus on skills, on really training as well. So please go ahead with your presentation and let's unfold what you had in mind.
Yes. Thank you, for inviting me for this event. And I put this quote because it's really about also the interaction between the global and the European level. Marijn, you can go to the next slide, and I will show my fist when the next slide is there. I think it's important to explain a little bit what defines me in relation to energy poverty and how I'm related to it. Because since a couple of years, I've become an energy coach for my municipality, so helping people with a minimum or lower minimum income with saving energy. And that really is because I really come from a small community. I still live there again due to the COVID and housing crisis that we have in the Netherlands, because we also have a shortage of houses besides also energy poverty with the energy crisis. But because I live in a small rural area, like a lot of people are really well connected to each other. And it's very normal in our local social culture that we help each other with community action. That we are sharing also services to each other in a lower ways paid, because you know that when you give something to community, sometimes you can also ask for it and people will help out. Also, I live on a community, like on a family farm. At home we have sheep and chickens and a care facility for old people who spend the days at our place to save costs in the healthcare sector, because then they don't need to be at home or they don't need to be at a special institution with full-time care, so they get part-time care and that way they can stay longer at home. And because I grew up on the farm, like this hand-on mentality is ingrained, because I worked on the farm already when I was young, and I was very much stimulated to also take a side job. And it's like for my functions that with tackling energy poverty, it's often a very much win-win-win situation, which is often not always the case when we talk about environmental sustainability, because many of my family and friends in the agriculture, they sometimes see climate policy as a threat for changing their earning models. For instance, we are now with a nature crisis in the Netherlands, and many farmers think they have to stop with livestock farming, while actually we're encouraging them to farm differently. And so I decided to go on energy poverty because I really see it really resonates with my community, how I can bring environmentalism into the daily practice of many people. And so how did I learn to become an energy coach? So when I was studying, I took a part-time job to become a handyman, so for local maintenance in my student building. So we have 200 tenants where I did the small repairments for electronics, for also construction materials, or to improve broken doors or windows. And all the big things, I could hire a company to do it. So I really learned a lot about how to deal with this. Then a couple of years ago, with a lot of young professionals, we managed to also be at the biggest national negotiation table for the Dutch climate agreement, because we effectively sent a letter to the relevant civil servants that also the next working generation should be on board of it, because 2030 and 2050 is for some people very far away, but actually it's very concrete for millennials and Gen Z, because it's within our working generation that we need to succeed with these goals. And afterwards, I really helped a lot with youth participation towards the European Green Deal. So now I'm also working for the European Climate Pact, and I also facilitate and support youth participation on the regional and local level in the Netherlands, because after the Dutch climate agreement, many of the ambitions have to be translated into the local goals with solar panels and windmills. A bit more about the situation. We are relatively rich compared in the world with the Netherlands. However, the wealth is not equally distributed. So small municipalities were normally not that engaged into energy affairs. Sometimes they only have one civil servant dealing with, in my municipality, 50,000 inhabitants, which is really tiny if you consider how much the energy transition means with infrastructure, with getting how to, in a smart way, insulate the houses and change the energy source, but also electric shared car mobility, because in my rural area, public transport is not only possible, so we have to think more creatively. However, in the Netherlands, we have a long-standing democratic tradition, so our civil society is fairly strong, and sometimes in a positive way also stubborn. So when they see that situations need to change, instead of waiting what politicians do, civil society already gets into action and showcase that an alternative reality is possible, or that action can be set up fairly quickly. And so we also saw that with the energy coaches. And outside, outside of the small villages, my community is more an exception, a strong degree of individualization. So especially in the major cities, sometimes it's very difficult, especially for old people, how to get help from external sources. So the challenge. So I've become an energy coach, and what I do is on a weekly basis, I visit one household to help out with the bills. So I look at the energy bills. I see whether all measures has been taken, and I try to connect these persons to the institutions of the municipality, which kind of financial schemes that are there, or which practical solutions can be there to structurally reduce energy consumption or to switch to cleaner sources. However, on a much larger scale, we see some challenges that, for instance, we have labor shortages. So I'm doing this also because we have too little formal work, labor forces to do it. That's why I'm doing this on a volunteer basis besides my normal job, because many more people should be involved to take care of the most vulnerable groups. While at the same time, in contrast to, for instance, supermarkets, it's very difficult for young people to find a side job with the housing corporations or with the installation companies. This year is the European Year of Skills, which is like a promotion year for the European Union, how we can make sure that more groups get more opportunities to develop skills or to find relevant jobs that are strategic for the European Union. And like the energy transition is one of them. However, what I also said in my quote in the beginning, we see that even though many young people would join the energy sector, we still have a structural deficit to really have the high ambitions in Europe, because like in some ways probably we want to be climate neutral in 2040, considering CO2, because we also have other greenhouse gases like methane and nitrogen oxide cannot be reduced as easily as CO2, which means that we really also need support from outside. But in the other way, in the 40s and 2050s, it will be also very normal that when Europe is already climate neutral, we need to help out also other places in the world proactively in order to be at global net zero way before 2050. Another challenges that are ahead is that youth participation in local democracy is relatively weak, and especially in rural areas due to misinformation and alternative right political groups, institutional distrust is growing. So that's sometimes very difficult because these programs like energy coaches are now supported by public agencies. So it's very important that you build trust with institutions by engaging them. And I think in the coming year, instead of only emergency measures, we will also see more trainings, hopefully, about how people can structurally stay involved, also to do other groups to help other groups with housing installation. So how do we turn an emergency action into a win about how we structurally improve our goals for the built environment? So what I will do concretely, I can explain to you as an energy coach. I will also support energy ambassadors of the European Climate Pact. So that's a program with 800 ambassadors across the European continent. And this year I will also write a blog how young people in Europe actually suffer, but also tackle energy poverty in like very diverse perspectives. And I will share that with other stakeholders in the event coming summer with the European Sustainable Energy Week. So if you have interesting stories that you know and what are happening in Europe, please let me know. And I really am open to help you also with your actions. What are you doing? Because the EU is also having a lot of international partnerships with other continents. And I really, at the first thing, if you are below 30 years, I really encourage you to connect to your level of preference with civil society. Now, on the global level, we have the SDG 7 Youth Constituency. On the European level, we've got the European Young Energy Network. On national and local level, you often also find civil society groups, especially in Northwestern Europe, also specifically for energy. Make use of governmental subsidies. Often they are not very well communicated to youth, but by civil society, they often know the easier ways about how they can be facilitated to specific youth groups. And try to create a value model for yourself and community. And that does not always need to be financial only. If you work with the resources that you already have at hand, you can easily grow. Because if you have a bold mission and you showcase small values and concrete, you can take steps and grow with that. And that's also how I managed to be on the stage, because I took small steps that led to personal growth and also helping a lot of people out with energy poverty. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fons. I really love how you roll up your sleeves and decide to be the change you want to see in the world. But that's also what Anna and Dimitri are. There is a mismatch between the climate ambition, the social ambitions, actually what our Earth wants and what people want and what policy leaders are able to deliver, and they decide to be really at the forefront of present and future challenges. So now we're going to move to Rachita Misra from the SELCO Foundation, who really rightfully said that young people today are going to face critical challenges in balancing their aspirations while also solving for climate. And she will be in particular focusing on access to energy as a critical way to meet those aspirations for younger generations, and sustainable energy as well. And who can play this role better than young innovators, farmers, entrepreneurs? Let's inspire and solve using sustainable energy for climate. Let me recall the people who joined us more recently that you have a QR code at the bottom of the page where you can connect and share your keywords, inspiring quotes and the key things that you would like to see, because we are designing together a word cloud. So please be inspired by those speakers. And after Rachita, we will move on to a panel discussion. So you will be able, so if you want to also ask a few questions. Okay, I'm not sure we will manage to take all of them, but please, if you already have a question to ask, please already write them in the chat of this Zoom call. So Rachita, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Marine, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And thank you so much to all the speakers for sharing their experiences as well, and for everyone who's joining in. So I actually wanted to share my experience from working at SELCO Foundation, where we primarily look at energy as a catalyst for development. And last year, we actually really started to kind of think over how do we really develop more young sustainability champions. And when we started thinking that, we went about, we're like an action-oriented organization. And so the first thing we did was we said, we'll develop 20,000 sustainability young champions in the country. But while we developed that target for ourselves, the biggest question that I think we grappled with was saying that who is a young champion, and who is youth today, and what are their aspirations, and what is their understanding of sustainability, and how do we really move towards them being champions of sustainability in their societies. So if we go to the first slide, so over here I wanted to actually start by introducing two young girls from my country, and the kind of aspirations they have, the kind of challenges they have, and the way that we try and understand, how they can play a role in the whole climate change space. So I have two young girls here. I didn't want to put a particular face to it, so I have items, please bear with me. But there is one young dairy farmer who's about 21 years old. She assists her, father and her family in the dairy farming activities. They're, living in rural India, have about 5 cows or so, and she has aspirations. She has to be a sustainability champion for us as well. The second is a young doctor, recently graduated, is doing residency, has to go with health centers, get more experience. Very motivated because she joined in because it was social change. She joined in because of COVID, and she really understands the role of health sector in pushing for impact as well. But as we move forward to the next slide, we learn a bit more about what their problem statements are, the day-to-day life, the day-to-day things that actually hassle them. And when we look into this dairy farmer, she basically, works hard on the farm. She takes care of about 7 cows. She has to milk them every day, twice primarily. She does it manually. She has to do it because the cows are used to her touch. They're actually kind of family members, in most of these dairy farms. But at the same time, it's not an aspirational job. She loves the cows, but it's hard work. The shed smells most of the time. The cows need to be milked at a particular time, which means that she sometimes misses some festivals, some fairs, going to some of the weddings in the morning. Right? So that's basically the challenge that she's dealing with every day. We meet the doctor now, right? So we have a young doctor who's doing her residency. She started to get exposure by going to rural areas and dispensaries and working there. And while she was really looking forward to going to these dispensaries and working there. It's really hard work. Summers in India can be really bad, and when you're working in rural areas, it means you're traveling through heat, through dust. You're working in a clinic which has no fan, sometimes no light, because there are power cuts. In Bangalore, I have power cuts out half an hour a day at least. Summers it go up, right? So you can imagine what it looks like in a rural area. She has a lot of writing work to do because she's making reports on her learnings all the time. She needs to submit that in her college, and she cannot do that because she doesn't have power at the health facility. Right? So most of the time she's burned with work, she's feeling uncomfortable. It's not the job that she imagined she was going to do. So when we look at these two people, if you go next slide, their aspirations are kind of very simple. They're looking to create impact. They love their family. They want to be independent. They want to be free. They want to be able to stand on their own feet, but they also look for comfort. They also look for safety. They also look for their own well-being as well, like all of us do. So when you go next slide again, do we really feel that these two women that we have here, these two young girls that we have here, should be concerned about climate crisis at all? What should their voice look like when we're talking about sustainability, and when we're talking about a growth trajectory for them as well, and we're talking about a future for them as well? So if you go to the next slide now, can we go to the next slide? We have covered this already. But this is where, in this whole context is where we actually started to look at what we refer to as a sustainable energy-led climate action program. And really at the center of this program are individuals like the two that I just introduced, but many like them. Young farmers, young women who are doing food processing industries inside their homes, street vendors, young people who are young engineers, young doctors, wanting to work in rural areas, even if not in rural areas, urban areas, but really looking to engage with climate action in a very, very tangible manner. Why? Because they're passionate about it, but also because they're impacted by it. So when we go into the next slide as well, we start kind of talking a little bit about the solution. Let's talk about animal husbandry, the first lady that we spoke today. Now, if we go to the next slide again, Dairy, if I can give you an idea of what it looks like in some of the developing countries, it's really the livelihood of the most vulnerable populations. We're not talking about big farms with 100, 200, 500 cows. We're talking about farmers, primarily landless, who need daily income. And because of that, they end up investing in about 3 to 5 cows. Farming is becoming extremely risky with climate, which means that even if I put in a lot of effort to farm, one rainfall and I might not actually have the right yield, because of which livestock is actually insurance for many of the poor people. So they invest in poultry, they invest in cows because they can sell it when it's time for need. It will actually be something that will give them a cash flow. It will give them daily cash on a daily basis, right? So it's really livelihood of the poor that we're talking about here. Now, in this space, the other thing that we know in India specifically, in a lot of developing countries, is that most of the activities in these dairy farms are currently not on energy. It's all manual. What does that mean? It means two things. One is that actually we can make these farms itself a lot more efficient in terms of their activities, and these farmers are a lot more resilient as well if we improve the efficiency of the running of these farms. The second is, how do we do that? If we do that, if we mechanize a lot of these activities, energy goes high. And this is a question that most of developing countries deal with, right? How do we develop? How do we look at our aspirations, but also curb our emissions? And this is where we feel sustainable energy comes in. So if we go to the next slide, for example, you have the dairy farmer, who is, what you see at the background is that she's not only looking at solar for lighting for her dairy farm, she's looking at milking machines or milking the cow. It doesn't need her to do it anymore. Anyone in her family can do it. It's a lot more hygienic for the cow as well. She uses pressure pumps which are run by solar energy to clean the shed, which is a lot more less tedious than doing it manually by hand, bringing buckets of water and doing it with the broom. Second is that what you see in the background, she's actually using hydroponics to produce her own fodder for the cow as well, right? By hydroponics, the dairy farmers are actually lying in heat stress areas, which means that when they don't have access to fodder, they're going into forested areas. The other aspect that is actually very important to note is that even if we're looking at production of fodder, it requires water, and we are in heat stress areas. So what do? Hydroponics is using about 1/5 of the water. So it actually is a much better solution maybe, right? So what we're actually looking at is seeing what do these trajectories look like, where the aspirations of a dairy farmer, a young dairy farmer, is able to be met, while also being able to help in their livelihoods, pro-poor and pro-climate solutions. The next aspect which we spoke about the doctor, if we go into the next slide, and maybe we'll have to skip the slide and go to the next one again to see some numbers. Very interesting here, right? So if we actually understand which is the 5th most polluting country and how much emissions are they actually giving off, it's equal to the emissions of the health sector. That's how much of emissions is just our health sector actually looking at, right? The sector which is supposed to take care of us, the sector which is actually supposed to maybe even take care of the planet because it influences our well-being as well, is actually the 5th largest emitter if you compare it to the 5th largest emitter as a country. The other aspect, again, the pro-poor development country angle. If I give you like an understanding of it, when we had COVID in the country, to get a test done, the main aspect was that how do I get my test sample to a diagnostic lab? Because we didn't have that many diagnostic labs, because power is an issue. It's not viable to do that. If you actually have to get the test sample, how do you look at vaccine refrigerator? I'm sure my co-panelist Dimitri would agree that Burkina Faso would have to question its cold storage units before it's actually looking at immunization value chain to be actually built out in the country. Right? So in that sense, we need to upgrade our health infrastructure. We need energy for that. Please, let's not be emitters. Let's look at sustainable energy for it. And what this also does is, we've seen such great feedback from some of the doctors that we work with, because you see the health center on the left. It's a remote health facility, right? If you are going there, you want that health facility to function properly. And that's what energy does. It actually empowers our first mile caretakers to be able to go into these health facilities, do what they are supposed to do it, with a feeling of well-being, but also while ensuring you are not contributing to more emissions. So this is the second kind of program that we've been seeing a lot of feedback from young doctors, young nurses who are stationed out of these facilities. A great kind of a push that we're also seeing from the government. For example, currently we have a program in India which is looking at powering 22,000 health facilities. We've already completed 3,000, and it's totally about 25,000 health facilities by 2026. And we have about 22,000 still remaining. But all the government and all the government kind of recognizing the need to meet the demands and to meet this basic demand rather of the young workers who are working in these health facilities itself. So what I would kind of go into is that I think for us it's been very important to encourage, when we're saying sustainability leaders, we're really talking about understanding what is the root cause of the problem, and sometimes kind of getting an understanding of the problem itself. And us as young people spending our early years and understanding the problem is understated. Getting our hands dirty, as a lot of my co-panelists said, to actually develop these solutions, prove them to people who actually need it, and push the voice bottom up also. Right? Actually make the changes on the ground, show people that it can be done. Because from our experience, what we've seen is that targets, are easier to announce, but actually making them implementable on the ground is a completely different ballgame. And that's where we need all the 39 people that are on the call today to actually get on, making them actionable. So these are, again, some examples of solutions that we've similarly documented in this fashion. I know I wanted to present this to give all of you an idea of the different ways that sustainable energy can play a role in actually making communities, go into these sustainability pathways and actually directly and indirectly meet their aspirations, as well as get them on a climate positive trajectory as well. So I'll pause here and really look forward to questions and discussions from here on.
Thank you so much, Rachita, for such an inspiring and really groundbreaking presentation. It was really what we needed on this Friday afternoon. I mean, it's energy is about the solution, the enablement, the empowerment that it generates, and it's not an end per se. And I really, truly, genuinely loved your energy. And from all the speakers, Dimitri, could you turn your camera on as well? Because we're going to start our panel discussion. Everyone, please ask your question in the chat. If you have any, please connect to the QR code and say a few words or a few inspiring thoughts, etc. for the word cloud. But let me kick off the discussion with the one question that I already asked you to reflect on, which is actually the fact that, well, you've seen that all throughout the week, is that social and climate justices seem to be really the two faces of the same coin, but yet the word social seems very, very often when involving young people, when discussing climate, when discussing policymaking in general. And in your view, how can we ensure that efforts to address energy poverty are actually integrated at all levels? And how do you envision your work, personal work, and work of your peers to enable this discussion to happen at a higher level? I mean, Dimitri set an example. He was at COP, and he will be at the next COP as well. So yes, please share your views on yours. I love how practical you four are. You are filling the gaps. So how can we better fill those gaps? Dimitri, if you want to start.
Okay. So I can start by sharing the experience of Faso. If we take the context of electrification, we have only 25% people of Burkina Faso which have access to electricity. In this percentage, we have around 73% of people who are living in urban areas and have access to electricity. But in the rural areas, only 6% of people living in rural areas have access to electricity. This is a kind of inequity in our country. And then we as a young person, we think that we have a lot of contribution to make. So it's why through the Association of New Energy Actors and also through the company I found since 4 years, since last year, we have a lot of solutions. We are working about advocacy. Every time when I meet a ministry, when I meet a policymaker, what I tell them is, oh, don't forget rural communities, because if we want to fight against climate change, we have to take them account. If we forget them, all the work we are doing will drop. We'll fail in what we are doing. But if we take them account, change will begin there. And if change begin there in a urban area, we are on the way of progress. So it will be more easy for us to fight against climate change. Then it's why I'll do the company. I'm making a solar cell for farmers and breeders, and also we develop technology for income generating activities of women, and also the Association of Young Energy Actors, we are making advocacy and also training for young people. In order to get skilled labor at the rural level. Then it's what I can say about the discussion. Thank you.
I think it's incredibly relevant, and I love how all of you are bridged towards the rural communities and the impact farmers, the small one, the bigger one, may have on the future. And I mean, Fons told us his story from farm to EU policymaking, which I think is incredibly inspiring, because in Europe we tend to forget this side of the population, and I guess it's also one of the struggles of the discussions we have. We tend to adopt only this global view on things, whereas the majority of the poorest still live in very rural or very remote areas where the traditional systems with the grids, etc., don't really work, and they have specific challenges, and they have some representation challenges, some decision-making challenges that are totally overlooked. So So thank you, Dimitri, for making the case onto this. Rachita, you said something in the chat. Would you like to make it live instead?
Sure. I thought I'll start responding to some of the interesting questions that were coming up. But yeah, I think there was a question on if we see any policy challenges in taking some of this work forward, and I just was putting down my experience of. I think our biggest challenge has been how people see things in silos. And I think the biggest challenge with climate is that it's so distributed, as a problem, but also how it affects, one factor affects the other, exemplifies the other. So since we've been working on energy, one of our biggest issues has been that SDG 7, which is energy access for all, is a separate goal and is not understood as a cross-cutting goal at all. We feel, if you're planning for better sustainable agriculture, if you're planning for improved health, if you're planning for improved gender equality, education, energy needs to be planned from the very beginning. To give you an idea, believe it or not, in our country as well, for example, if you are saying that you have a health facility in a remote area, our policy guidelines still say that you have to have a generator. Right? Because they are accounting for power disruptions being a very, very core disruptor in the functioning of the health facility as well. But similarly, why can't they plan for sustainable energy instead? Why do you have to look at dirty fuels coming up in your policy guidelines still? So I think for us, it's been that, really kind of make SDG 7 go away, but make it a sub goal in every single other SDG goal or sustainable development goal. But, I don't want to end it on a negative tone. So I don't want to say that everyone is thinking in silos. There are people who are extremely positive, who understand this. And what we try to do usually is really use those people as champions. Hound them, get them to implement certain programs with us, use them as examples to inspire others. And I think that is something that has really helped us make some policy changes, which then kind of institutionalizes this thinking as well. So yes, that's a big gap in policy, but it's not like it's, there are people who don't have solutions for it as well.
Anna, you've been setting up different organizations really to kind of break those silos. Can you kind of unfold that, what it means to you to break those silos in the Mexican context?
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that I agree with Rachita, with what she said. I also think that the policy challenges are mainly that there's a lot of climate change denial. I think that people doesn't know the consequences that there are about energy poverty and, well, climate change. So I think that's horrible because they don't see that we are all affected by that. And we need to take action, not only youth. So I think it's key to give an alternative education so they can see all the problems that we are facing, because I think that knowledge is power. So we must take action into that. And when we can ensure that are affecting globally and nationally, then we can make projects and get together to make policies so we can ensure that there's really climate action. Because as we see at COP, what happens is that they only talk about their perspectives, or they say that what they will do, but they really don't get into that. So I think that also we need finance to really get to the projects, because the ideas are already there. So we just need to make sure that those projects are really getting into action. So there will be a real movement, and we can ensure that next generations are keen into climate action. So yeah, that's my perspective.
So Fons, what are your takes on this conversation? Because you've been trying to create some discussion at many different levels with the European Climate Pact and with the various organizations you've been working with, and in your own personal journey. And so you said something in the chat. You sounded really surprised when you saw Rachita's presentation of the dairy farmer. So what kind of let's say challenge or opportunity would you like to build upon when hearing this conversation?
Yes.
How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it resonates with me because it's it's linked also with the energy trilemma, which is not only a dilemma but with three components, which is not only affordability, which is now mostly a problem within Europe, I come from one of the most developed regions in the European Union, so accessibility is there. It's just that it's too expensive for the hours when it's needed, especially for the poorest communities. And the poorest communities are mostly old people that are living alone and don't have any family anymore around them, but also first generation of Turkish Dutch and Moroccan Dutch people, because they still lack with like institutional understanding, and often their offspring has also moved away, like in different corners of the country or in neighboring countries. So it is here more like not only about access, but also really about affordability, and also that we have lack of labor because we have, compared to your countries, the oldest population in general. So we have the least number of youth that actually can execute it. So old people sometimes do have the time when they're retired to help out and to volunteer. So in my municipality, we have 10 energy coaches, of which 3 are like below 30 years old. 4 people are like medium age, and 3 are like really retired. And these persons who are retired do have like the time, but often they don't have like the energy to move forward. So that's why it's really important to have the cross-generation cooperation. Also, what resonates with me between among the countries is like this like breaking silos. I really feel that since 2019, due to 2 social movements in Europe, both the Fridays for Future movement that I've experienced all over the globe, but also the Gilets Jaunes movement. So the Yellow Vest movement that originated from France, which also was also like a social consequence of energy poverty and not social inclusive climate policy, also came to Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands. And those 2 social movements have led to the European Green Deal, also that the social component should be structurally ingrained, and that the European Green Deal has all the sustainability topics connected into one framework to achieve not only goals on climate, but also nature and environment, and having this the slogan "leaving no one behind." And that really makes me like hopeful, and much like I really feel empowered in the last couple of years that our generation, by the European Union, but also by the Dutch national government, is empowered to break through silos and to professionalize youth input. Because I'm also very much interested to hear from Dimitri, and your appointment as a youth minister, do you do that really pro bono, free on your own time, or are you getting paid for it? And for instance, due to our contribution to the National Climate Agreement, our regional youth organization for youth participation got recently a couple of €100,000 to really professionalize youth participation, because it cannot be free. Because if you want to build like the quality of your democracy, which is under threat in Europe, by like negative political forces, but also external forces like we see from Russia, it takes like you cannot only build it from you. I can do it because I'm in a privileged position, but if you really want to get good input for youth and inclusion, I'm interested to hear from Dimitri whether you also feel that you have facilities. At least I feel enough facilities from my context.
That's really, really interesting. So Dimitri, and then Paula, and then Rachita, would you like to explain how really young people can be empowered to be decision makers in the positions you're taking? Because really, it seems, thank you, Fons, for recording that actually it's the older generations who manage to have time to volunteer for certain activities, some supports, etc. And they are often the one being politically more, let's say, represented. So how do you professionalize really the climate action, the social action, the forward-looking action that you are doing? Dimitri.
Okay, thank you very much. And as Fons was explaining, as young people, we want to do something, we want to do good things, but most of the time we don't have means, we don't have resources to do what we expect. And then all the work I'm doing as part of the company I have, all thing I'm doing is for free. So I need to invest my time. I need to invest a lot of resource. But most of the time, government don't have a kind of how to say it, a kind of thing to help you, to help new organization. But I think that in order to get us to get youth more involved in the fight against climate change and also energy access everywhere, we have to create a kind of volunteering and also put the means for youth. And when most of the time, as a young people, what I see every time is that when I'm on the table with some kind of people, most of the time they are more older than me. They have experience more than me, and they think that when I say something, when I make proposition, they are looking at me like a child who don't know what he's talking about, and this is a real issue for us. But if we have space to express, if we have a means to do what we are thinking about with our peer, I think that this is the way to get youth more involved in our context.
Yeah, so you need really some kind of support for your work as well. Anna and Rachita.
Yes, well, I have like a similar situation to Dimitri's. When I get involved in NGOs and all that, it really happens that when they see you young, they think that you don't have like experience or the knowledge to really be there and make action. So when you really start speaking and getting involved, then they see that you really have to be there, and about that. So I think that's a challenge for youth in general. I think that happens a lot, and not in only one region of the world. So I think we must change like that mindset, because not because of our experiences we can do something about it. It's only about passion and what really gets into you. So I think that's basically what matters. So we need to start involving youth in all the spaces that we have. If we get invited to some forum or some webinar, we have to invite others so we can make sure that we are all in this together and that we really collaborate. And doesn't matter if we are from different nations, we can do a lot of projects together. Or also we could have like a discussion like this when we can exchange our point of views and really have like a great mindset, and also make policies that are really worth it and that can get into, because sometimes it happens that there's only one policy, but you can really do something about it. It only is on paper, and you can get into action because they don't explain how they can do it, or it isn't related to the national context. So I think that's really important. So yes, thank you.
Rachita, you've been kind of working on structuring those messages. So if I understand correctly, so what is your take on what was just said?
So I think like my experience has been similar as well. Parts of the Indian society, like especially when we talk about government, it can be structured in a way where there is like an age hierarchy that is often there. But at the same time, I think like when from our experience here, the other aspect that I think like I've realized very strongly is that when we're talking about climate action, you are really talking about action across different sectors, right? So it's not just the government, but it's also enterprises, the social enterprise movement, the folks who are really interested in technology, innovation, whether it's civil society organizations, whether it's the policy think tanks, whether it's academicians, right? So it's really like you really want that change across the different kind of stakeholders that are there. And I think like different sectors kind of respond differently, or there are different barriers that might be there in these different sectors as well. But one thing that works, which I completely, also agree with Anna, is that that might be the initial bias. But then, your work really shows, your passion really shows, and what you're adding to the table, the value that you're adding to the discussion is something that, speaks over a period of time. So my main thing would be like, don't make age a barrier in your mind. Kind of go at it, don't give up. Even if you're old, change is not going to be easy. So it's not an age thing at all. You just need to keep at it, and you need to just keep moving forward. So that would be kind of my suggestion as well. Just focus on learning and focus on the change that you're trying to make, and rest will happen.
We've been talking a lot about age, but how about gender? Dimitri and Paula, you made strong stances on the fact that you were really advocating for gender equality, and how does that translate in the work you do with the organizations? Because this week, really International Energy Protection Week, we saw a lot of data. Well, we saw first that there is a lot of data on energy poverty, but not so much disaggregated data on how energy poverty affects more women than men, but it's actually a fact. And really how to kind of overcome this also at the decision-making level. Dimitri.
Okay, about women, I can say that in Burkina Faso context, mostly we are now fighting for clean cooking, for clean cooking technologies, and also for making space for women in policy making level. If we take our Ministry of Energy, we have only, I think that we have only not less than 5% women working on energy domain, and they work at the position like direction assistant, and I don't know, secretary. I don't know if the pronunciation is correct, but sorry. Yes, just doing basic things. but not on the technical work. Yes, they are not doing technical work. So now we are fighting for empowering women enough and help them to do what they expect. Also about clean cooking, we are starting a new project with our organization about how to resume an old project with GIT about women clean cooking technology in rural areas. So yes, I don't have enough topics enough. How to say it? I don't have enough topics about that, but I think that what we are doing at our level, and also we have an organization only for women in science, to help them to get more involved in this case. Thank you.
Yeah, only around 25% of women as students in STEM, but then it's not really reflected then in the hierarchy of the utilities and the energy businesses. It's something that we've been working on together with Dimitri for quite some time as well. Anna, you found it really an organization focused on women and how to make them more visible and more proactive. But really, there was a question that was asked, so I would like to couple them. How do you manage to communicate your experience with policymakers, and how do you make sure that energy poverty, women's rights, climate actions is really on the agenda, and how to engage them? I think, Anna, you have quite a unique take because you have set up 3 different channels with the different organizations. So what is your really experience on this? And please insist on the gender fact.
Yes, thank you. My experience is basically that we have to also be involved in NGOs that are really into making action. So that's what I basically do. I really get into searching like which NGOs are really into the purposes of each project. So what I do is reaching them out and really explaining the project and telling them all the objectives long term, so we can have like a really big impact. So after I get them involved in the project, and also I get in touch with policymakers and tell them about all the impact numbers that we have in our projects and how to replicate them in their governments. It's like the best idea. So right now we're working in Mexico City with an alcaldía that is basically a local community. You could see that we are really getting into these projects and making and building an agenda so everyone can get this alternative education, because as I said, knowledge is key. So we are doing this and it's really working. Well, there are some challenges, like they want to focus in only one topic or like 2, but they don't want to see like maybe the social aspect or the environmental aspect. So we encourage them and we explain them that it's basic to make this world a sustainable one. So we are into that right now, and yeah, it's difficult sometimes, but when you get to know the people and they really get to know you, as Rachita said, when they know how you're capable of and what you're capable of, it's awesome, and we can do like some great alliances there.
Fons, as you can see, you are nodding a lot, and Rachita as well, but maybe you have some tips you would like to share, because I think this is quite a unique opportunity to have this kind of conversation, and I would really love to keep it forward and get some tangible results out of it, or an action plan. That would be really like the highlight of my day. We still have a few minutes to go, so please share your thoughts and maybe your ideas as well.
Yeah, so on the gender issue, what I also see is that when it comes to climate action in the Netherlands, many more women are involved when it's about working on the energy transition. And I think it really has to do with communication and the values that you have behind your words. So one of the things that we are seeing now is that with the regional youth energy strategies, finally also get more women involved, and because they're also underrepresented in my energy coaches, because all the 10 of them are males instead of women, and because my municipality doesn't use inclusive words and engagement strategies. How to also make a good average. What is important, for instance, if it's a Turkish-Dutch person, it's really better if you can also speak Turkish besides Dutch. And when it comes to like the energy poverty, it's also very relevant to keep in mind that a lot actually is taking place, because energy poverty in the Netherlands at least has also to be put into the same light as big student debts, being unable to buy high prices of houses, the general inflation of food, and energy poverty comes on top. And often students are excluded from government schemes for financial compensation. So like I already see that in local and provincial politics. Next month, I think in 2 weeks, we go to for a provincial democratic vote for the provinces, that this is a topic that the province should facilitate with the municipalities, because it's mainly a national and local affairs, but the province can of course steer the municipalities in their behavior. What we can do concretely across continents is, luckily, like at least from a European perspective, with the EU, we've got the African Union European Youth Hub that's specifically empowering like equal participation of both continents on youth-led projects. Also, I would really recommend to just check existing funding streams coming from Europe to your countries, and to be a watchdog yourself, whether they also youth mainstreamed, because last year was the European Year of Youth, and the EU has the ambition to really youth mainstream all policies. And it's also from your side very important that youth from your country, but also youth from the EU are integrated in it, because sometimes like you can start things from scratch. I think that's a nice thing for like people that have the privilege, that have resources available. If you don't have resources available, it's about following the money and making sure that political promises are also reflected in the execution. As Rachita said, that implementation has its own dynamics, because people are following the bus from time to time, or politicians say. But if you are steady and you are following a concrete niche, there are relevant EU programs that are maybe related to your same mission. And I'm willing to dive deeper in it, but as far as I know, there's not really like a global thing that connects all the four of us together, but we can search, because probably there are these global forums that facilitate it.
Just to
follow the money.
Follow the money. And also I think like one of the things that was coming to my mind is also that in India, what we see is that we are lucky in a way that there are a lot of policies which do have a gender lens built into it already, whether it's around financial inclusion, whether it's around encouraging women entrepreneurs, even like small entrepreneurs, which are home-based enterprises maybe in some cases. There is also like a women and child development department which focuses a lot on women welfare itself, women rights as well. Of course, a lot of specific policies in the health sector which are focused on women as well. But I think like what has been also interesting, as Fons pointed out as well, is that men sit on funds which they don't know how to use. And I think like in a lot of cases, like say when we speak to a lot of other energy practitioners as well, they wouldn't even look at these pools of money as things that can be actually channeled for energy programs as well, right? So why would a women and child development department look at an energy program? Well, why wouldn't you? If you're looking at a women entrepreneurship program, why wouldn't you actually expose these young women entrepreneurs to actually energy solutions which they can adopt as well? So that I think that convergence again has been something that it's not just kind of following the policy, but it's also being like, I know you are looking for a program and here it is, and I will implement it for you. The other aspect that I also wanted to share is that we also feel that the whole gender and energy narrative is not really well understood, especially in the whole space of developing countries. I'm not sure if it's the same in more developed countries as well. So for example, the examples that I was taking of the two women as well, whether it's in farming, whether it's in any livelihood at all, the activity done by the most vulnerable population. And many times it's the women of the household, right? So why is the woman the one who's cleaning and milking the cow? It is the hard job. Why are women usually the ones who are doing backbending work in farms? It is the harder job. It is often at times that, there is a role of even that mechanization and that technology innovation and that energy integration to actually come into a lot of these spaces. Cookie-based activities, there was a very interesting study somewhere where actually said, in North India specifically would have summers where you have 42 degrees Celsius, right? But what we're actually saying is that, policies were saying, have working hours, have a break in working hours from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. because it's the hottest at that point of time. Encourage people to stay indoors, don't come out. But women who were staying indoors, they were actually facing issues with heat stress because their houses were made of metal sheets. So you actually had 5 degrees higher inside the house than actually. So staying outside in the heat was a lot more safer. 47 versus 42 outside, right? So actually, like even heat stress, the understanding of heat stress, home for a woman is a workspace in the context of India, right? That's a heated workspace. How do we design homes which are actually suited for women, suited for heat stress? So it actually helps in the livelihood and income security of the household as well. So I think there are like these kind of energy narratives linked to gender, which are also not spoken about, is kind of missing in the gender connect itself. And that often kind of can show up then in the policy as well, in our housing policies, in our energy policies, in the way that we're doing land use planning, in the way that we're encouraging calculating for energy demands in some of the rural areas or slums or urban smaller kind of communities as well. So that was just another perspective I wanted to add.
I think it's absolutely fascinating and really so relevant. And I must say, I'm really impressed by how the four of you managed to get a bigger picture, get to the bigger picture, and you are doing it much, much, much better than many of the decision makers, policy makers, who tend to have a very one-size-fits-all approach on energy poverty and how to address it, how to overcome it, actions that need to be implemented. And you have gotten into so many details and so many ideas. I'm really looking forward to continuing the conversation and really keep on breaking those silos, because I'm really just like you. I think silos are much better when you get to roll over them. So I would like to pass now the floor to our final speaker, who's Sejal Prakash from UNESCO in Nepal. She's also a young leader, but she comes from an international organization. So that's a very, very interesting sense. And a very, very interesting position she sits in. And she believes that young people should be able to participate in sustainable energy transition and mobility, interesting point, which can lead to opportunities for skills and suitable employment, placing youth as drivers of sustainable social transformation. It's exactly what you guys have been showing us that you could do. And energy sector suffers in absence of meaningful, useful participation. So what if UNESCO was acting a little bit more on this? Sejal, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the beautiful introduction, Marine. So my task this afternoon, actually it's already evening here in Nepal, is to wrap up the conversation that just took place. But my task was also to, give a way forward on how the conversation keeps resonating and creates the ripple. So I would rather do the later one than to wrap up the task, because we are all here to, raise our voice in the energy and climate situation. I sort of felt very intimidated while I was listening to all the panelists right now, because not just because of how eloquent speakers you guys are, but also because of what in this is defined as a youth you have been doing in your sector in your country. So I am I work in UNESCO, of course, but I am also from that generation from the global south who has considered, or who has seen cooking as a task, a very I would say, because most of our cooking would be very drowsy and then based on the solid fuels, but now I could see young people self-claiming that the cooking is their hobby, because we could see now how cooking as a work has changed, not just because I think young people are developing new hobbies, but it might also be because of our kitchen structure. It might also because now we don't really need to cook our food using a solid fuel, but also cooking as a hobby comes in fingertips. You just have to think about what you want to make, and the things are there in your internet. You just can it's just a matter of a switch, because of all these changes that has occurred so far. So I just would like to pick up on what Fons was saying about the force which ties all of the four panelists together. And I think, and I was also thinking about that. What is it? And then the question that Rachita was keeping asking about, why isn't people working together? Why is it? I mean, this ability of asking question about why is what makes youth, I guess, because the young generation, they have already passed this phase and they have accepted the fact that nothing can really happen. But then the young people, they do have this ability of asking why. For instance, Dimitri, as a young energy minister, already someone in that position, already solving the real challenges, real problem, and helping out internally displaced people. For example, Anna, who has this audacity to say what she's dreaming about. She wants to become an ambassador. Young old people really don't say that what their dreams are, because they have already lived their dream. They're kind of ready to not dream. But then Anna, she was emphasizing on how keen she is in the sector of and climate justice, let's say. And Fawn, I really like the way how you introduced yourself, having said that you care for the community, and also you had that slide talking about how you learn from your past, and you've also emphasized so much on skills, because there's this data which says that renewable energy alone can create more than 42 million jobs by 2050. And I think this is the high time we capitalize on skill if we want to solve the real problem, and if we want to put youth as a problem solver. And Rachita, I really love the way way how you give the snapshot of the emotional tipping point of two women, and then how you show that there is a differential impact of one factor, for example, energy poverty on two people. I mean, that's what the world is, because if you look into the global north and global south do really don't use that amount of energy that global north does, and that's how energy poverty or energy as a whole is so different in terms of the global setup also. And Rachita, I also really liked about how you have given example of the small interventions that can bring a tremendous change in life of the people, and small interventions within your initiative has brought change in people's life in terms of, let's say, farmer, or let's say be a doctor. So I'm just like picking up that factor which would bound four of the speakers together, and this is the answer what you guys or what we as a youth have unique, and that's a driving force for all of us to look into the entire section of the energy poverty at this point of the time. So there are a few things I would like to again put forward is that in terms of what youth have done so far, we already have the answer from all of the four speakers. But in terms of what next, I would say the most important thing is across the border, which we always put forward. But at the same time, when we talk highly about knowledge and energy transformation, we kind of fail to tap into the energy or the innovative ideas that people from the global south, or let's say a rural population might have. So I think we should be able tap into that as well. But at the same time, empathizing on what global south, the most energy poor section of the world, suffers is very important, especially to the leaders living in the global north, I would say, because I do have experience of having my own small solar latrine while I was appearing my board examination, because we have that 18 hours of load setting per day. So like having electricity was kind of privileged to us, but at the same time, people in the world don't really some part of the world don't really know that what living without electricity is. So I think empathizing on the situation, the real situation, is also important if we really want to, if the actors really want to solve the problem. So I would also like to emphasize a little bit on the social issues and climate issues, because we're trying to reason the gap in between the social and climate issues. I think when we talk about social issues, we are very much used to living with social issues, because that's what we were taught to. We were not really taught to ask questions about the social taboos and stuff. But when we talk about the climate and energy, I think it just came up as an emergency, and we feel like we have to work right now. And if we don't work, the entire existence of the entire human being is in the question. But I think beyond looking into this thing like social issues and climate issues in a silos, we should consider that the earth is a closed system, and where society is a layer to it, and then we have to balance the ecocentric and also the anthropocentric worldview to solve the problem. So having given all this information, I would like to come on my let's say identity right now, wearing a UNESCO hat. UNESCO, we have just come up with the country strategy, because we didn't have a science program, and it's just been a year that we have come up with the science program, and we place youth and indigenous community in a center and forefront of our interventions and our work. So Marian, your question on how international players like UNESCO consider energy poverty and youth, I would definitely say that our country strategy, who has this overarching theme of saying that our science program is for society, we do place youth as a center. So that is already an intervention. But what we really want to do within the energy sector is we also don't really want to step on the toes of other UN agency, and other UN agencies are also already a big player. But at the same time, we don't really want to don't put energy into our radar, because we are having a conversation with student energy, which is the biggest player, I would say, in the energy and youth sector. So we are cooking up something, and then maybe we will be able to implement that in coming future. So with this, I would like to stop here, but I would definitely like to take the question, and I could see somebody writing in something, but I'll have to read that. But yeah, thank you for this opportunity, Maureen.
Thank you so much, Sejal. You've done an amazing job. There is one question, very relevant. How can this project connect with UNESCO to align efforts at local level and increase impact? This is from